The first time Dr. Rian saw the Umberlan, he didn't believe they were real. Even as they stood before him, 5 meters tall, cloaked in shadows that seemed to breathe, some part of his mind whispered this must be a hallucination. Or a test. He wasn't sure which would be worse. He had read the reports, of course. Everyone had. In every document and recovered transmission, the Umberlan were monsters. The apex predator of the galactic spiral. A species that conquered not with technology, but with presence. Worlds surrendered because resistance was irrelevant. Civilization after civilization yielded to them, not from war, but from something older, deeper. Fear rooted in the primal self. And yet, here they were, not destroying Earth, not issuing ultimatums, but asking for something. We offer our young, the Umberlan emissary had said. Its voice was not a sound, but a vibration, echoing directly into the bones of the human delegation. For survival, for learning, for peace. The Galactic Council was stunned. And when the Umberlan clarified their request, entrust their offspring to humans, pandemonium followed. Politicians argued. Military factions prepared for betrayal. Religions declared it a divine test. But in the end, Earth agreed. Under protest, under fear, but with a flicker of hope. Rian never wanted to be a hero. He was a xenolinguist, not a warrior or ambassador. But his research on pre-verbal cognition and emotional resonance made him a candidate. Not the top one, not the first choice, but the one who said yes when others hesitated. That's how he ended up in the mist-cloaked clearing on Erebos Station, a nature dome built on a moon far from Earth. The air was heavy with oxygen and moss, engineered to mirror the Umberlan homeworld's ecosystem. But nothing in the environment compared to the presence of the creature before him. It loomed, eyes glowing like twin suns buried in midnight. Behind it, 5 smaller forms padded forward on silent paws, each one a miniature shadow with flickering gold for eyes. Rian's muscles tensed. Fight or flight warred inside him, but he forced stillness. The giant Umberlan lowered its head. This is no game, it said. Our bloodlines are memory. Our children, weapon and wisdom both. You will teach them restraint. You will survive them or perish shaping them. The warning was clear. This was not trust. This was necessity. I understand, Rian said. The largest pup stepped forward. Its eyes locked with his. Something ancient passed between them. Neither thought nor language, but a raw impression. Hunger, curiosity, calculation. They are yours now, the elder said. Guard them well. And just like that, it vanished into the mists, leaving him with 5 alien creatures and a weight that pressed against his soul. The pups were silent for hours, moving in a synchronized circle around Rian as he set up the base camp. He avoided sudden movements, kept his voice calm, and narrated everything he did, not because they understood him yet, but because it helped him stay sane. He named them, silently, to himself. It helped. The tallest, the one who stepped forward first, he called Ash. The smallest and most twitchy, always flicking its ears and glancing around, was Kita. The others were Vorn, Ira, and Dusk. He didn't speak the names aloud. Naming them was for his benefit, not theirs. They watched everything. When he built the fire barrier, when he set up sensors, even when he drank water. The way they tracked him reminded him of predators gauging prey, but also, faintly, of students observing a new teacher. By nightfall, Rian felt their eyes burning into him through the dark. Their own bodies shimmered at the edges, blending into shadow and reappearing, never fully present nor entirely gone. At some point, he slept. He awoke to the scent of iron and decay. Ash was sitting inches from his face, staring. Rian didn't move. Behind the pup, a dead forest lizard lay torn open. An offering. A gesture? Thank you, he said softly. Ash blinked once. Then it turned and vanished into the trees. Over the following days, Rian established routines. Food distribution, observation hours, controlled introductions to Earth technology. He documented everything, recorded their growth, cataloged behavioral patterns. But he also spoke to them, quietly, intentionally. Language, he believed, was not just learned through words but through presence and pattern. The pups didn't respond, not at first. But they watched, always watched. By the second week, something changed. Kita dragged a fallen branch to the center of camp and began carving spirals into the dirt. When Rian approached, She looked up and repeated the pattern with her claw in the air. A symbol. A question? A memory? Rian mirrored the gesture. Kita bared her teeth in what could have been a threat or a smile. Then she ran, disappearing into the trees. Hours later, all 5 pups returned. They circled him again, but this time, they weren't just watching. They were listening. Rian told them a story. A human myth, simple and short. The tale of Prometheus. The gift of fire, the consequence of giving power to mortals. Vorn growled low at the mention of betrayal. Ira tilted her head at the idea of punishment. When he finished, Ash walked up and pressed its forehead to his knee. Contact. The first true sign. 3 weeks in, and things were changing faster than anyone anticipated. Rian filed reports to command, knowing they were likely flagged, dissected, distrusted. He didn't care. The pups, no, the young, were learning. Not just language, but empathy. He wasn't sure who was changing more, them or him. Then came the signal. A coded pulse from the monitoring station. Short. Urgent. Unknown vessel detected. Closing. Rian froze. Only authorized Umberland ships had clearance. If this was rogue. The ground trembled. The pups stirred. From the east ridge, black smoke billowed upward. A sound like thunder cracked the sky. The young ran ahead. Without hesitation, without fear. Rian followed, lungs burning. He crested the ridge just as a small fighter ship landed roughly, skidding across moss and stone. Its hull bore no insignia, just jagged scars and gunmetal plating. A hatch burst open. 3 figures emerged, human, armored, weapons raised. Rian stepped forward, shouting, "Stand down. This is a protected site." They didn't listen. One fired a warning shot into the air. That was their mistake. Ash moved like a shadow through light, appearing behind the soldier before he could turn. A single blow, and the man crumpled, alive but unconscious. The others turned to fire, but the pups were faster. Rian screamed for them to stop. They did. Frozen mid-leap, claws extended, but not yet striking. The soldiers stood trembling, then dropped their weapons. Rian stepped between them. They held back. Remember that. No one spoke, not even the forest. Later that night, as the wounded were evacuated and security protocols initiated, Rian sat beside the pups around a cold fire. Ash leaned close. This time, when Rian spoke, he used no words. Just a thought. Why did you stop? The response wasn't language, but feeling, like pressure on his chest and the taste of old memories. A vision. Fire, broken things, a voice saying not yet. He understood. The young had made a choice. Not because they were weak, but because they were learning something stronger than power. Restraint. He looked at them, each more than they were weeks ago. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew this. They were not monsters. The forest around the reserve had grown quieter. Not in sound, but in presence. The birds still sang. Insects still clicked and buzzed in the underbrush, but they all moved differently now, aware of what prowled through the trees. Rian adjusted the lens of the thermal scanner and swept it across the clearing. 5 heat signatures, all still. The Umberland young were resting under the canopy, their breathing shallow, bodies nearly indistinguishable from the shadows they curled within. They had grown. Noticeably. It had been 42 days since the incident with the rogue soldiers. Since the young chose not to kill. Since Ash looked at Rian not as a warden or caretaker, but as someone who could be trusted. Maybe. He hadn't reported everything. Official logs noted a confrontation averted, but omitted how fast the young moved, how precise their restraint had been. Earth wasn't ready to know just how intelligent or dangerous they were. And neither, Rian suspected, was he. He stepped into the clearing, and one by one, 5 pairs of glowing eyes opened. Ash rose first, followed by Vorn, then Ira, Kita, and Dusk. The pack gathered without a sound, forming their usual semicircle around him. Language lesson, Rian said, holding up a datapad. They didn't blink. He tapped the screen, displaying the symbols for safe, home, and listen. A simple sequence. He spoke the words softly, one at a time. This wasn't new. They had done this every day for 3 weeks. But now, for the first time, they responded. Kita stepped forward and swiped a claw across the pad. Not randomly. Purposefully. She selected home. Rian's breath caught. That's right, he whispered. She chirped, a low-frequency vibration that buzzed in his skull like a tuning fork. Ira came next, placing her paw on listen. Then Vorn, choosing safe. The pack sat back. Ash did not move. Rian met his gaze. Do you want to try? Ash stepped forward. Instead of touching the pad, he looked straight at Rian and projected an image into his mind. An unmistakable thought sense. Fire. Not destructive, but controlled. A campfire. Safety and story. Then, the emotion shifted, warmth and tension mixed. Ash sat down. They understood not just words, but meaning. Rian powered down the pad and sat with them. The lesson was over. Now came the real work. Observation, reflection, trust building. That night, a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the canopy, and the small shelters built from polymer and carbon fiber composites shuddered under the wind. Rian stayed outside, crouched beside a boulder as lightning split the sky and thunder rolled down the valley. The pups had vanished into the shadows, but he wasn't worried. They'd always come back. Until they didn't. Morning brought silence too deep for comfort. No paw prints. No tracks. The scanners were blind. The entire dome felt empty, gutted of life. Then came the growl, low, keening, and alone. Rian ran toward the sound, heart pounding, pulse thudding in his ears. He pushed through a thicket and found Dusk crouched near a shallow stream, his flanks sliced open, bleeding from a wound too precise to be natural. Another trap. Not from outsiders. This was internal. A test from the Umberlan elders. He felt it in the air, the way one feels a storm before it breaks. He lifted Dusk's body as carefully as he could. The young groaned, more out of frustration than pain. Not weakness, betrayal. He carried him back to camp, radioed for med supplies, and when the others returned, soaked, wild-eyed, they circled Rian protectively. Something had changed. They no longer saw him as an outsider. In that moment, he was part of the pack. That night, the pack howled. It wasn't random. It was rhythm, structure, a story in sound. Rian recorded every second and spent the next 2 days decoding it. It was memory. They were recounting what happened. Dusk's ambush, their search, the fear, the decision to return to him. By the end of the week, the young began speaking words. Rough, guttural, wrong in pitch and structure, but unmistakably human. Safe. Iris said one morning, nudging Rian's hand. He dropped the datapad. Home, Vorn echoed. Ash said nothing, but Rian didn't need him to. His silence carried more clarity than words. Language opened something new between them, an emotional channel that bypassed biology. With language, they laughed more, played more. They mimicked Earth idioms in strange and unsettling ways. Dusk, fully recovered, once repeated a phrase Rian muttered during a frustrating software reboot. Stupid machine will eat me alive. Later that night, Dusk crept beside Rian's tent and whispered, machine, eat, alive, then snorted in a way that resembled laughter. Still, there was tension. Progress brought scrutiny. The Galactic Council sent observers. 3 delegates, 1 human, 1 Delcon, and 1 Arcanid, arrived without ceremony. Their ship cast a long shadow over the dome, and when they stepped out, the young fell silent, retreating to the tree line. Rian greeted them with professional warmth, already dreading the report that would follow. You're too close, the human delegate said flatly. You're not evaluating them. You're raising them. I was tasked to build trust, Rian replied. It's working. That remains to be seen, said the Delcon. Her silver-blue skin shimmered as she surveyed the perimeter. There are rumors the Umberlan are divided, that this experiment is not consensus-driven. Rian said nothing. He couldn't prove otherwise. When the observers asked to interact with the young, Ash refused. Not with aggression, but by vanishing. The others followed suit. For the first time in weeks, the camp was truly quiet. The observers stayed for 2 days, logged their disappointment, and left. That night, the young returned. Angrier, eyes brighter than Rian had ever seen. He sat with them as they circled him. You left, he said. Why? Ash projected a single image into his mind, a web with broken strands. Mistrust. Rian nodded. You were right. Ash stepped forward and placed his head against Rian's chest. It wasn't affection. It was protection. The young had made their choice. And with that choice came danger. 3 days later, the dome's perimeter was breached again. No shots were fired this time. No enemy revealed themselves. But the sensors recorded a shadow moving through space, pausing just outside visual range, then disappearing. The Umberlan. Not the young, but an elder. A message followed, embedded in the encrypted data stream. They are too much yours. Rian read the message 3 times. He didn't sleep that night. He kept a hand on the emergency beacon but didn't press it. If Earth pulled them now, it would all fall apart. The young had grown beyond their species' intentions. They were no longer weapons or diplomats in training. They were something new. And Earth, he realized, was being tested too. One afternoon, while setting new thermal traps to monitor wildlife, Kita darted past him and dropped something at his feet. A flower, not native to the dome. Rian scanned it. Species, unidentified. He looked at Kita. Where did you find this? She simply stared. Then she projected a new word into his mind. Not a symbol, not an image, but a spoken syllable. Trust. The rest of the pack gathered. Ash stepped forward. And for the first time, he spoke. Not in pieces, not in mimicry, but with full intention. We stay? With you. Rian didn't answer. He didn't need to. They had crossed a threshold. They were no longer just guests, or a mission, or an experiment. The signal came at 3:17 hours, subtle, encoded, masked as background radiation. It pulsed in a pattern too deliberate to be noise. Rian sat upright in his bunk, heart hammering. He routed the signal through 3 decoders before it made sense. For syllables. Ancient Umberlan. Prepare. They come. He stepped outside, the cold air hitting like a slap. The young were already gathered, forming a loose circle beneath the canopy's thick boughs. Their eyes glowed brighter than usual, casting faint golden auras on the ground. Ash looked to him, not for guidance, but confirmation. Rian nodded. You felt it too. No one spoke. Even Kita, normally the most playful, remained still. It was like the forest itself was holding its breath. By dawn, new symbols bloomed across the forest floor, etched in spores that shimmered in the wind. Warning runes. Umberlan design. But the markings were not from the young. They were elder script, ancient, precise, and ceremonial. They weren't meant for humans. They were a summons. Later that morning, a ripple in the dome's barrier told him everything he needed to know. The elders had arrived, not by craft, but by stepping through space-time. They emerged like shadows unpeeling from the air, towering forms wrapped in dark fur and armor that shimmered with integrated star metal. Silent, deliberate, and utterly alien. 5 of them. One stepped forward. Eyes like twin suns stared down at Rian. You have altered them, it said. Its voice bypassed air and struck directly into his thoughts. I raised them, Rian replied, forcing his voice steady. The elder turned to Ash. You do not belong to him. Ash didn't respond with words. He walked to Rian's side and sat, his body pressed against the man's leg. The gesture was unmistakable. Another elder hissed. They have forgotten. Forgotten blood, forgotten purpose. Iris stepped forward now. We remember. Her voice, still rough, still childlike, carried power. They are not weapons, Rian said. They're more. That is not your decision. Rian squared his shoulders. It's theirs. The forest cracked with silence. The kind that could only fall when everything living knew something terrible might happen next. The lead elder looked at the young, each in turn. If you stay, you forfeit legacy. You will not return to the Constellation archives. You will not lead the next shadow tide. You will become less. Ash finally rose. We choose. The elders recoiled as if struck. The word, simple, declarative, echoed with psychic force. We choose, Ash repeated louder. We choose now. Suddenly, the forest shimmered. Energy rippled through the clearing. The spores glowed with new resonance, drawn not by elder power, but by the young. Their bioluminescence pulsed in synchrony. A declaration. The elders turned away. Not defeated, but measuring. We will not stop others, the lead said. You are not safe. Earth is not safe. This choice has consequence. And with that, they vanished. The forest exhaled. Rian sank to his knees, shaking. Well, he muttered. That could have gone worse. Ash snorted, amused. In the days that followed, the dome expanded. Rian requested and received approval for habitat enlargement, framed as species behavioral enrichment. It was a lie, but a necessary one. The young needed space. They were growing faster, mentally and physically, than anyone predicted. But there were still echoes of the warning. Kita began waking in the middle of the night, pacing in tight circles. Dusk became reclusive, his eyes scanning the horizon during every meal. Even Ash began to patrol the perimeter. Something was coming. It arrived without warning. A rift opened 50 kilometers outside the dome, a spiral of synthetic energy and quantum fire. Not Umberland, not Council, something older, something forgotten. The first team sent to investigate vanished within seconds. The second team transmitted only one image before they were lost, a figure composed of fractured light, its body refracting time itself. The Council panicked. Not publicly. Official channels downplayed the event, labeled it a gravitational anomaly. But Rian saw through it. The Umberland elders had stirred something in their withdrawal, something ancient enough to remember when the galaxy was still forging itself. The young gathered around him in the command cabin that night, silent, alert. Ash finally spoke. It hunts. Us? Rian asked. No. All. He replayed the image again, the shard being stepping through reality as if it were paper. It didn't match any known database. Not even the Umberland archives. What is it? Vorn answered this time. Old hunger. The phrase chilled him. By the third day, tremors reached the dome. The forest withered in patches. Wildlife fled. The air thinned slightly, as if even oxygen was reconsidering its presence. Then the dreams began. Visions shared by every sentient on the planet. Nightmares wrapped in perfect memory. The ancient being, its form flickering, inconsistent, whispering a promise of undoing. Rian saw entire planets collapse in his sleep. He saw stars freeze. Not explode, freeze. He woke screaming. The young were already awake, standing in formation. We fight, Iris said simply. Rian opened the emergency channel. I'm requesting orbital strike authority on grid Theta 4. The Council replied with silence, then static, then denied. Too many unknowns. Evacuate. Rian turned off the comm. He looked at the young. They won't help. Ash stepped forward. Then we do. They began preparing, not with weapons, but with resonance. Their abilities had deepened. Ash showed Rian how to amplify thought through structured memory. Ira created a pulse field around the dome. Dusk and Vorn reinforced the perimeter with psychic impressions. Walls of fear and confusion meant to deter intrusion. The being arrived at dusk. It did not walk. It didn't move in ways that made sense. It appeared pixelated, as if assembling itself from broken dimensions. It hovered outside the dome, the air screaming around it. Rian stood with the young. Ash projected a phrase into the creature's field. You are not wanted. The being replied in 1,000 voices. We remember the dark between stars. You lit a spark. It must go out. No, Rian said aloud. It must grow. He reached out. The young followed. A mental link. Not attack. Not defense. Communication. They showed the being what they were. What they had become. Not soldiers. Not threats. Family. The being paused. Time warped. And then it fractured. Not exploded, simply unmade itself. Dissolved into mist and light, leaving behind a crystalline seed that pulsed once, then went dark. Silence. Peace. The Council arrived 2 days later. Dozens of ships. Weapons primed. Too late. Rian debriefed them, carefully. Officially. Unofficially. He stood at the edge of the dome with the young. They'll never understand, he said. No, Ash replied. But you did. The Pact gathered around him. Not as protectors. Not as subjects. As kin. And in the quiet that followed, as stars blinked into the canopy sky, Rian knew the truth. Humanity had not inherited guardians. It had earned them. And something new had begun.